My name is August Sievering. Uh, Augie, they call me Sievering, and I was in the U.S. Navy as a radioman in World War II. I was from Wyandotte County, Kansas, and I went to high school at Washington Rural High School of Bethel, Kansas, which was a little town close to Kansas City, Kansas, and now it has absorbed Bethel. But that's where I joined. That's where I lived, but I had to go to Kansas City, Missouri to join. And and I went down when I was 16, and they smiled graciously and told me to go home and grow up a little more and come back when I was 17 with my parents' uh, agreement, permission, and then they'd talk to me. So then I left from. I went to Kansas City, Missouri to catch a train to uh, Minneapolis to get on the Great Northern uh, Railroad to go to northern Idaho to the Farragut Naval Training Station there. And another fella, another kid in my class, or he wasn't in my class, wasn't a running buddy, but I knew him, but he happened to leave the same time I did. And we decided we'd stick together. Only we didn't realize the military did things different than we did. When we got to Farragut, we'd stuck together on the train, and we stuck together on the bus that picked us up off the train when we got to Idaho, and we were still together. And then the we got on buses and trucks, and there was a whole bunch of us. There must have been a line 100 feet long of boys going into the service, and an officer stepped up and says, "Count out 1, 2, 1, 2 down the line." So we counted out 1, 2, 1, 2. Well, we weren't smart enough to put somebody in between us, so uh, Ralph Bates was his name, and so Ralph was number one, and I counted number two, and then this officer screamed out, "All of you number one, step forward 3 paces and turn to the left 12, and all you twos do the same thing to the right." And then he said, "Okay, all of you number ones will go to Camp Scott. All of you number twos will go to Camp Benyon." So in other words, we wasn't only going to not stick together, we weren't even going to be in the same camp. There was probably 6 camps in Farragut, Idaho, and I never saw one more time. And that was when we finally got our first leave. Uh, we went to Spokane, Washington, and I saw him in a USO there that is set up to fix us places to ride home and give us a piece of pie or cake or something. And so help me, that was 80 years ago, and I've never seen the man since. Never. In those days, there was a threat on the East Coast from the Germans, and on the West Coast from uh, the Japanese. What inspired me was they had it was in, of course, we didn't have television and hardly even radio then, but in the newspapers and on what radio there was reports of in California a Japanese submarine had successfully landed, and so there was a fear spread amongst people at that time that, oh no, they maybe are going to invade us. They'll have submarines, maybe let the troops out on the West Coast. There was a real fear in this country, and so uh, boys that had just finished, just graduated or getting ready to graduate, were leaving for the service. I started. Uh, I was just starting my second semester uh, of my junior year, and I was 17. Well, at 17, I was actually a little bit old to still be just a junior. I, like the other boys around me, all felt a duty to our country to that we need to do something, that we need to do our part. So I don't regret it. I didn't have a lot to do with the outcome of the war, but I feel like I served my country, and that's what I wanted to do. And that's why when they have the holiday parade here in Chillicothe, I've for 30, 40 years maybe, I've always tried to be one of them that flies the flag. And uh, this was, I was just a kid. I'm 99 now. I think I was just 96 then. But a Vietnam veteran, one morning when they was going to start the parade, uh, he said, uh, uh, "We figured you ride in the cab of the truck this morning instead of the back of the truck." And I said, "I can't fly a 5 by 8 flag from the cab of a truck." Well, we figured it was a little cool and windy this morning. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in the cab. I said, I didn't agree to take part in this to be comfortable. Uh, I said, look at it like this: those men that gave, some men come back with one arm, no arm, one leg, one no, or maybe they were messed up here. What would they have thought if they'd have known at the time that someday a veteran himself wouldn't even get in the back of a pickup truck as a little cool? So he took his hands on both my shoulders and says, I agree with you. And he helped me into the truck. So I got to fly it again. I said, not only that, I says, I don't fly the flag to honor myself. I fly it to give respect to the men who weren't as lucky as I was. And I fly it so that the little kids around the parade route see that we honor the flag, and I hope that they grow up honoring the flag like we do. And that's what my goal is. I have a couple of them. Uh, there's one that I like to talk about that is a memory of me every time I eat a meal. Uh, when the war was winding down, uh, uh, is toward the end of it, and I end up in Shanghai, China, uh, and we anchored in the river, and there was little rowboats and single paddle boats, double paddle boats, sailboats, rowboats, all kinds of little bitty boats plying up and down the river. And I'd gone down to the galley and had ate breakfast. And just before you climb the ladder to get up to the side of the ship, there was a crate of oranges and a crate of apples. And and there's a little sign on top of it that said, take one. And that in the military, that's what it meant. Take one. Don't, they got a crate of oranges and a crate of apples. Take one. It meant don't take one of each. It meant, and it didn't mean take the whole basket. It meant take one, because there's like 129 crew members, and we had Army troops on board. Everybody had to get part of this. I chose an apple, and I climbed up top side, and in all these ships I mentioned before, little boats, I noticed there was there right straight out from me about 20 yards. There was a I don't know. She's a Chinese girl, but probably 10 or 12 years old, and I suppose it was her father or her grandfather. I don't know which one or the other was rowing the boat, and they were really concentrated looking at me. And pretty soon she went like that. And I whirled, because like I said, the war just ended, but we were still jittery. And I whirled around like that, thinking she was warning me. about something behind me, because even though you can't understand somebody else's language, and they can't understand yours, there's international gestures. If you go like this, no matter where you're at in the world, they know it. Or if you go like that means no, or I went like this. Well, I turned around and went like this. It's, I don't know what you mean. And she pointed again. She pointed again. I went like that again. I don't understand what you're talking about. And and she pointed to her hand, and and so I pointed. You mean my hand? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I still don't understand what you want to know. And she acted like she was eating something. I could see. Oh, then I realized I had this apple core, part of the apple still in my hand, and the the peeling and part of the apple and the core and the apple seed, and so she she acted like she's eating something. So I thought I pointed to this. Is this what you mean? Yes, you're like that. And so still, what do you want me to do? She held out her hands like to throw it to her. And now it's like, yeah, she's, you know, so, so I reared back to throw it, and she grabbed a little net that they fish for for fish or for garbage out of the river, and and uh, and she grabbed that net and went like that, and she wanted me to throw it, so I threw it, and I missed it by about 10 feet. Well, her father, grandfather, whoever was rowing the boat, rowing, he rowed closer to it, and then she took that. And she had a little net with about, oh, 4 foot, 3 or 4 foot handle on it, and like they catch fish, or in this case garbage. She dipped it and got that apple core out of her out of her out of that net and put it in her mouth and ate it right there in front. Ate the whole thing, seed and all. And and I was 17 when I'd turned 18 by then. But even then, I remember thinking in my mind how lucky I was. I just had gone down below to the galley, and I got a pretty nice meal. And here this little girl and her father or grandfather could, could only eat like my garbage. I threw that apple core, and she ate it immediately. And that every day for breakfast, if she wants a breakfast, she's got to go with her father or grandfather, whoever it was, and dip garbage out of the river that somebody else has thrown in. And I thought, how, right then, how lucky I am, and how lucky I want you guys to feel that you live in a country where you don't have to eat somebody else's garbage. Now, even in this country, you read in the paper about uh, people without a home, or they're living on the streets. But even them, there are places in churches or centers that set up where they can get something to eat. Well, in China at that time, there was no such place. No such place. If all those people on that river, if they want anything to eat at all, they had to fish it out of the murky water. And so I don't eat a meal where that that little girl's vision doesn't flash in front of me and make me feel how lucky I am that I can sit down to a decent meal. And I hope people can grasp that and understand how fortunate they are to live in this country. Of course, it was good to get home, uh, but I immediately went down looking for a job, and jobs were hard to find real hard to find because everybody was coming home from service. Kansas City, Kansas Junior College was offering classes for any military that didn't finish high school. Well, I didn't finish high school, so I went back uh, to Kansas City, Kansas. It's now Kansas Community College, I think, but then they call it Junior College. And I went back and I got some credit for being a radioman. It applied towards my high school diploma, and and then I needed what other I had to get geometry and I don't know what else. But anyway, I went the first semester, and then I got all but one. I needed one more credit. One more credit. Well, I didn't want to go to school for just 1 hour a day, so I I took college classes for the to fill out the day, which only that semester. Uh, so then when I was looking for a job, uh, you couldn't find a job. The only thing I was offered was they were painting the Fairfax Bridge over the Missouri River, and you could they'd hang you from a rope with a gallon of paint, and you could paint the structure of the Fairfax Bridge, and I didn't want no part of that. And so anyway, I finally uh, I wanted to go. I wanted to do woodwork. I wanted to get into uh, where you could help make cabinets, woodworking. And I'd go to a woodworking shop. Yeah, we'd hire you, but you got to get a union card first, and or we can't hire you. So I'd go get a union card, and or try to get a union card, and they'd tell me, well, you got to have a job first before we give you a card. So anyway, finally, I just saw an ad in the newspaper. They were just wanting somebody uh, uh, to learn how to lay tile and linoleum, and I applied for the job and I got it. And that's what I did for 45 years. I laid tile, linoleum, and carpet, and for 45 years. And the challenge was trying to end up getting started on a job that you could stay with and follow. And I followed it for quite a few years. Probably in the military, they like for you to do everything right, and I learned a lesson there because, like I'd mentioned before, that my buddy had gone aboard the battleship South Dakota, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to radio school, but that's what they wanted me to do. So I learned. Uh, my military taught me to sometimes it maybe not be just exactly what you want to do, but do the best you can. I tried to flunk out of radio school when I was in the service, and I heard if you flunk out, they'll send you right to sea as a deckhand. Well, that's what I wanted to begin with. But then this officer, this radio school superintendent says, August says, I, I noticed you didn't do very well on this last test you took. He says, now it's, and then he says, agreeable, you're not the top of the class, but he says, but your work's been acceptable. I don't understand why it's failed so far. I want you to sit down there and send me a copy, and then I'll send you a copy. And and well, then fear struck me because I'd heard scuttlebutt around the buddies that if they heard you try to flunk out, you could be court-martialed. So the fear set in about whether I'd be court-martialed. So I really tried there. So when I got done, he says, "Well, now that's a little more like your work." He says, "I think you need to uh, just bear down and work a little harder and pay attention." So that's what I learned from the military. The message I would give to them is kind of like what I said before about flying the flag. That we served our time. We did what we did to save this country, and now we turn it over. We turn it over to you, and that's the message I'd give them, and uh, to be proud that they're American, and be proud enough to be American to give us some of their time like we did to make it stay that way. And and the message that I already kind of covered is that you sometimes will have to do things you don't really want to do, but do it the best you can. And there's one thing that has always bugged me is the people, and I've had people say it to my face, "You're from the greatest generation," and I have a problem with that. I, I don't feel like I come from the greatest generation. I don't feel that way, and I've talked to other veterans, and other real veterans don't feel that way either. I was in World War II, but I wouldn't want to sit in front of a room full of Korean veterans or Vietnam veterans or Afghanistan veterans and say, "Yeah, we was greater than you." No. In every generation, you have great people, and in every generation, and ours included, you have a sprinkling of idiots. That's just the way it is. And so I've always had problems. I appreciate people saying that. I mean, I don't, it's nice of them to say it, but I personally don't feel that. I feel like we have people right now as we sit here that are that are they're giving their time to their country right now, and so I don't feel any bit better than them. You don't have to be assigned overseas or go to war. Uh, Maybe you join the military to serve your country, and the military would send you to Ohio, and that's where they would needed somebody. And and if that's where they send you, why accept that's what they want you to do for your part. Don't disagree like I did about not being a. I later accepted the fact that I better be a radio, and I got to where I didn't mind being it. It's hard to do something you don't think you're qualified to do, or you're unable to do. It's hard to accept that, but learn to accept it and do the best you can.